We're going to go ahead and start, okay? Welcome. It's a smaller crowd. They don't realize that DAO is the most important part of the entire Web3, so they'll have to figure it out and come back in, or you'll have to tell them out there. Missionary the cause, right? DAOs are for sure the most sustainable, and probably because I think that they ultimately are a finance structure that's built on top, as you know, on top of the web, on top of these software chains that ultimately become, I think, the most important vehicles. And so that's what we're going to do today is talk DAOs. We have something of a loose agenda. We're all going to make our own introductions here in a second. I've proposed a couple of questions that we're going to discuss. And then we want questions. And if you want to ask a question right in the middle of what we're doing, please do. And hopefully at the end we'll have questions as well. My name is Rob Lamb. I'm a 20-year international finance lawyer. That may seem like something of an odd way to come about DAOs, but a couple of years ago I had a client that wanted to structure a DAO. And with my background in complex international structures, I immediately saw how that might work. And I immediately saw through the paradox of structure. There's this constant battle between decentralization and traditional form. And a lot of lawyers, frankly, a lot of corporate lawyers, they've had a hard time shifting their paradigm to sort of make those work. And I came into it and I said, I think that we can innovate structure. And so I have been doing that on a pretty constant and regular basis now for 2 years, so much so that that's all my practice is right now. Every once in a while somebody says, well, you do a corporate this or that, and I get super bored by it, and I do it, you know, because they're paying clients. But if you come to me and say, there's a DAO, and I have this idea on a DAO, I'm like, okay, let's stop. And so because of that, I represent a handful of fairly prominent DAOs, and I was just recently retained, and without revealing too much, I was recently retained to be one of the multi-sigs, one of 4 multi-sigs, on a DAO called LitDAO that is a social justice litigation DAO. And one of their biggest cases, their initial biggest case, is the Luna litigation. So we'll be really deep into that here shortly. I'm not a litigator, but I'll be one of the gatekeepers on that project. So anyway, that's me. That's my background. I'll turn it to Amy. Let her introduce herself, and we'll sort of work around.
Hi. I'm Amy Stellhorn. I run a brand and marketing agency called Big Monocle. I started that out in Silicon Valley and then moved here to Utah 5 years ago. We, as an agency, got really interested in DAOs because you can hire yourself to work for them. So instead of like hoping the clients that we want to do brand work for or NFT projects for call us or marketing to them, we can choose to hire ourselves to work for the thing we want to work for and simply write a smart contract or a proposal that if it passes, like we've successfully created, we're in clientless agency, which it sounds, I don't know, is anyone else in here in like agency or services work? Just not really. But to pick your clients and pick the exact project you want to do and the exact scope of the project, and that goes for everybody here, developer, coder, whatever, you can see a need, write a proposal, and if it passes the vote, you've just created a job for yourself, and it's the exact job you want to do because you scoped it. So that's pretty dope. So Big Monocle is, we have this strategic, like our mission is to give ourselves right now the power to choose. And so DAOs figure really prominently in that power to choose because we can simply choose to do projects that we want to do. And then actually, I also recently started a DAO and I am doing a project for a DAO. So what I feel like I know, I feel like going through the last 6 months, I knew some things and I learned a ton and I learned what I didn't know, but I feel like the lion's share is now what I don't even know I don't know. And really it's just, it's revealed there's so much to know and there's so much I don't even know. So happy to be here today and share with you what I do know and big questions I have too.
My name's Sean O'Brien. I am one of the stewards of a DAO called Buy the Broncos. Our goal is to buy all or a percentage ownership of the... Yeah, sorry. I don't... Yeah. I'd rather be in the stands, to be honest, guys. Yeah, so my name's Sean O'Brien. I'm one of the stewards for Buy the Broncos. Our effort is to raise sufficient funds to buy either all or a percentage of the Denver Broncos, which are for sale right now. We are going live next week with the announcement of a number of current Broncos players who are part of the DAO, as well as former Super Bowl 50 champions, some of the Super Bowl 32 and 33 members of the Broncos, a former GM of the Denver Broncos under Pat Bowlen, and a number of other, I guess, celebrities and athletes. And so, yeah, we're pretty stoked. We have a couple of other projects in the works, including what we hope is the first first Hollywood production backed by a DAO as well. 3 episodes have already been made. And so that will be announced at Consensus next month in Austin, if any of you guys are going. So, yeah, hope to see you guys there.
Hey everyone, my name is Martel Metellus. I'm the co-founder and CEO of SoCo. So we are a Techstars-backed startup that recently turned into a DAO. And so the concept was around basically upskilling and reskilling people into Web3 careers. And so what we want to do is we want to create an ecosystem where college students specifically can learn specific protocols and how different companies build products so that they can immediately get access to hiring managers and founders to be able to work at these companies. And so what we were doing in the beginning was more of a placement model, which worked very well, but then we realized with Web3 there's a knowledge gap. And so it's one thing to place somebody at a company, but it's another thing to really onboard them and get them involved in the ecosystem, especially working for other DAOs. And like there's this ecosystem that's existing right now that we're essentially trying to help younger people who are willing to try new things be able to get into this specific ecosystem and thrive. So think about like a Coursera, but for Web3 and specifically with protocols that we work with. Earning our tokens, which we'll release down the line, to be able to have the access to be able to directly speak with these founders and these hiring managers to get jobs. So we're in the more recruiting space. We were just recognized by Masari Crypto as a recruiting DAO. So SoCo. So you can go join SoCo.com is our page. SOKO, yeah. So SoCo is actually Swahili for community. So that's where the name came from. Yeah, that's a brief intro.
Awesome. So the first question I'm going to ask Sean, I want Sean to answer, is what is a DAO? Okay. What is a DAO, and what does he see its purpose or purposes being?
It's a good question. I think for me, and this is anecdotal, a DAO is the culmination of Web3 tooling, and it's essentially what Web3 is all about. It's meant to give everyone the opportunity to have their own fistful of dirt in whatever project that DAO ultimately targets. And so it's an ethical, transparent way to not only coalesce and I guess, capture contributions amongst people who do not know each other across the globe, but also for those people to direct their efforts and attention and their resources towards a common goal. I guess that'd be the highest level. Yeah, and I don't know. It's always awkward to be talking about a DAO as a person because it's meant to be decentralized, autonomous, right? And so until we have AI creating DAOs of their own volition, right, it still is going to take humans. But, once that happens, I guess the joke, Elon Musk will be taking his ship to Mars, right, to avoid the AI. But yeah, so for now, it still requires humans, and that's why for us, we created a nonprofit called DAO Stewards, and that is set up for us to simply put in place the infrastructure for the DAO to exist, and then for operations. I guess, we view ourselves as the maintenance crew, right? We cut the lawn. We try to make sure that if there's a leaky pipe, we fix it. But yeah, the DAO is supposed to operate independent of any one individual or group.
I just want to make sure I understood. So you created a DAO that will govern the DAO.
No, it's a nonprofit. I'm sorry. We'll get in again to the extent that it's sexy for you guys. Our legal structure is unique from that, or taking on again, any sort of liability as an individual or a small group, and so our nonprofit shields us in that space.
So any DAO could engage with your nonprofit to build their DAO. Okay, that's cool. I'm going to add a dictionary, maybe less poetic version of what a DAO is, if that's okay. Sean did a beautiful job of really the soul. Just in case there's people who don't know, it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. It's a leaderless, ownerless company that is supposed to just kind of self-organize and do things governed by the blockchain, smart contracts, and that removes the need for a lot of roles so that theoretically the humans are left doing knowledge work and not being accountants and things like that, because that is happening on chain with smart contracts. So I think there's so much more to say about what a DAO could do or not do.
The ideal of the DAO is that it is AI. I mean, that's basically the bottom line, right? Is that you can craft and create a smart contract that is so smart that it truly is trustless. It sort of governs the entire operation. And that becomes ultimately trustless and decentralized. And that's the hope and the ideal of it. My experience is, as a practitioner in the space, and as somebody that is approached when that ideal falls or fails a bit, is to then come in and put traditional structure in. And so crowd participation, crowd resourcing to a cause. And whatever the cause may be, you craft and draft the smart contract around that cause, and then you don't need a CEO, you don't need management, you allow it to sort of run and move into its sphere. And frankly, I have found that some ventures work really well. Some maybe don't. Some do what Sean is doing, and it allows access to an economy or to a venture that they could not otherwise ever get. So you have this ability to have a smartphone and to participate in this space. Now, I'm a finance lawyer, right? So I've done accredited investors my entire career. Okay, and there's a reason for accredited investors, but that means that maybe a fraction of the entire populace is actually participating in private investment. A DAO, the ideal of a DAO is that it opens up and allows basically anybody that has an interest in that particular venture to jump in.
And I just think I would love you to go into right now. I think it's useful to say, how is this totally new area where the SEC doesn't know what to do with it, and how do the humans operate and all that?
We'll talk about SEC in a minute. I have a whole section, but it deals with structure, and I'm not avoiding the question because compliance for me is super important. But we'll get into structure in just a second. Did you have a question? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say my definition of a DAO is kind of not as technological because we're just not at that point yet, but I think it's just a new way of looking at what an organization is. So taking more of like a top-down approach, so like bringing everybody who can potentially be a stakeholder, like making it more merit-based so that anybody can earn their way up. I mean, I come from startup world, so I feel like startups start off as a DAO, and then like there's like now bureaucracy and like all of these different things. So I think DAOs right now just allow for anybody to be able to contribute and actually see their contributions and earn based on what they've actually done within that org, like equally, rather than having a top-down approach that we traditionally see today.
Perfect. So I get approached all the time, and I get two questions. I'm really good on one question, I'm terrible on the other question. So we're going to use this panel to help with both these questions. One is, how should I structure my venture? So you guys have an idea, and you think, wow, I could crowdsource this. I could crowdfund it within the Web3 space. I could drop this thing on the Ethereum platform, and this thing would absolutely kill it and crush it. How do I do that? Okay? So Amy's going to help us a little bit because she has been through the blocking and tackling of the how. Okay? And then we'll have a conversation about legal structure, to Amy's question, what that means by way of LLC, onshore, offshore. We're happy to have that conversation as well. But Amy, how? Somebody has this idea, somebody wants to do it. How do you get from Discord, or how do you get from concept, white paper, to a Discord audience, to branding and pushing this idea out?
So I would even say, why does this thing need to be a DAO? So right now, DAO's hotness, everyone can see potential, but also just wants things to be a DAO that maybe shouldn't be a DAO, or don't really realize the DAO potential. So I would say the DAO I just started is called Regen DAO, and we are a self-described group of optimistic people who give a fuck about the planet. That's where we're sitting. And we want to attract smart innovators, artists, entrepreneurs to put their talents on climate. Largely, we say we're optimistic because there's a ton of research out there. There's a book by Paul Hawken where he details all these projects, but they've been able to regenerate ecosystems in a decade or 2 decades. So we're saying in one generation, but you can take, they took a piece of the desert and made it an oasis in 10 years. And one of the projects we're going to be funding is doing these beautiful mangroves down in Mexico, where they're turning literal kind of wasteland coastal regions into really biodiverse ecosystems and trees, and putting off beautiful things. So how did we start this? It started with despair, climate despair, and looking at in the world what do I actually really care about? What can I care about? And to me, it was the planet, just deeply wanting to stop the extractive systems that everything that we do tends to be pretty extractive, and even beyond the earth, people just taking for themselves. And regeneration is the concept of feeding as you take it. And this is starting to be a good business idea. If you look at who is investing heavily in climate right now, it's it gives me a ton of hope. Chris Sacca has a whole climate investment fund. It's becoming big space. I saw a tweet this morning that the WeWork dude is entering a climate, he's starting I don't know, I didn't click because I was a carbon exchange. So this is a big market, and there's actually solutions that I want to fund, and I want to see them win. So together with some partners, my primary partner in the DAO, and I don't know if we call ourselves partners, we're just people that are starting it, founders. The founding team is this woman called Laura Stein, who built TEDx for TED and Singularity University, and she's this incredibly connected human because of TEDx. Anybody who's been an in-country TEDx partner and had all these beautiful speakers, she's very close to everybody. So she's 1 degree from anything, but very Web 2. But she's seeing Web 3 has all this potential. So she and I started, and we pulled together some of her deep relationships from around the globe. So the founding team comes from China and India and America and Europe, and we're kind of tying our resources together to get this thing going. The vision is that we have a coin, we have a token, and with that, we invest in regenerative projects. So if there's a regenerative entrepreneur building mangroves and whales, cool whale stuff or whatever, we want to fund that. But then that's not going to pay off quickly with insane returns. It's going to pay off someday, hopefully. So there's a venture component to it. But the other resource we have is these deep relationships with really impressive people around the planet. And so we're bringing their talents in. So art has become a big part of who, if you know, he paints these stop motion animation things. If you are I'm a designer by trade. In your foundational art classes, you learn about William Kentridge. And Laura was over at his studio. He doesn't need to do anything in this world at all, unless he really wants to. Talking to him about doing a project, and he said, actually, I would be very interested in creating art, and then we sell it as NFTs for trees. So he wants us to source a regenerative tree project that he could get behind. He'll put his art up. And this isn't like generative NFT project. This would be like, you know, a series that would go to very serious art collectors. But to make that appealing to more people, right? Like, we want everyone to be interested in art and in the DAO, and like not all of us can afford a Kentridge. So what we want to do, hi Natalie, what we want to do is hold a piece of every collection as a treasury asset for the DAO. So the DAO also becomes this art treasury that has value. So anybody who, maybe you don't come because you care about climate. Maybe you come to our DAO because you just want to hold a piece of a Kentridge and this rich collection we have of these big artists who are coming and putting their effort in. So how we kind of formed the idea, even before we were working on naming before we were really figuring out what was going to drive value for the DAO. So I wouldn't say like we had a clear business plan, we just had a vision. And began. So we have a light paper, we're calling it, not even a white paper yet. It's published. We've done our first NFT project with an artist in India who the proceeds, he's actually got the highest selling NFT out of India. He sold his orgasm. It was a visual representation. He went to a lab with MIT and hooked himself up to electrodes. The art itself is a brain. It's just like what's happening in his brain. But trained AI to like extract stuff from his art and overlay it. Anyway, he did a project in support of Dune, this really beautiful regenerative development that's like astounding if you look at it, DHUN. So that's like our first prototype, but I would say we're really far from the how. So I'm hoping to learn even more today as we go about it, because we're still moving into like building the community on Discord, which will be critical to the DAO actually operating. And then we have artists and projects lined up for the fall. In November, we want to do a big thing, so we need to get our stuff together. What's going on is there's tons. If you go to daomasters.xyz, it's an awesome resource. They have everything you could want to know about. So they make it pretty easy to spin up a DAO, spin up whatever you need. Like the software and tools are right there with really academic. It's a very academic team that are working in the DAO Masters DAO, and they break it all down really clearly. But so we're trying to pick like what are these tools? How is this all going to go? How do we govern? Who's on our SIG? I'm a SIG on the wallet. But like, exactly how are we going to launch our token? And we haven't done that yet. But I will say we're like we're trying to build our community to get geniuses in there to be helping tell us, because the weakness we have right now is we're a bunch of primarily Web 2 people trying to enter this space. So we need to pull the right people in and partner up and then pick the right software stacks.
The tools that are out there are an excellent place to start, for sure, just like she said. So I'm going to ask Martel, and then I'm going to ask Sean as well, the how of it. Okay? I know that you both have put a lot of effort into it. How do I launch a DAO?
So for us, I mean, I think a lot of this is new. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert in it, but I've spoken to people who've built successful DAOs before. The big thing is like, what's the vision? So you go broad, like what are you trying to accomplish? So for us, for example, we want to build tomorrow's next Web3 operators and entrepreneurs, right? So that's the broad vision. And then you go narrow and you say, well, what's the mission? So that's like quantitative. So we want to have 1 million college students into Web3 companies by 2025. Right? And then you look at, well, who's going to support me in this mission and vision? And then so you create this like kind of like persona of who would join the community. So for us, it would be college students, right? And so when you figure out the persona, now you have to put all these people together. And the whole magic behind it is, and I learned this from, because we've launched a product, we've learned a lot from it. And the biggest thing is that people don't tend to build the community first and then build the product to the community. It's usually the opposite. They build the product and they try to build a community around it. So with a DAO, you can actually build a community with a shared interest and figure out exactly what to build for that community, launch it to the community, and then expand it. So I think a DAO just allows for you to be more community driven and build something that is actually for a subset group of people. And you can actually give them ownership in this entire organization that you have through whether it's a token, whether it's whatever it is you want to have as a representation of your company. It could be equity. So I think it's a new way of looking at how a company works. And I know for us, we thought about, well, is it going to be like completely flat? And a lot of our advisors who've done this before, they're like, no, that like realistically at first, that's not how it works. It's the same as a startup. You build a core team, right? And then from there, you might have a community of people who come in and out of the Discord or the community. And people, the whole point of it becoming a DAO, because I don't think anybody really is a true DAO right now, is that you have the general community kind of push into like this core team that you have. And that's what they call like an exit to community. So like when you think about outcomes for a DAO, I've always asked like, why would I create a DAO? Like capitalistically, like what makes sense for an entrepreneur? And the whole point is you want to be able to then sell whatever ownership you have to the community of people who now want to take over this entire organization, and it becomes autonomous and everyone is contributing, everyone's participating. That's like the future end goal. But to start, you're going to need that core team of people who come in every day, put in the administrative work, put in the operational work to make it happen. And then you have contributors who are basically general community members who want to contribute, who want to do different things, one-offs for the specific organization you want to have. And then the general community, like I mentioned, are just people who are interested in the topic and want to be involved. And the whole point is just to push everybody into this core team that you have. And you as a founder, as an operator, can now have a bunch of people around you and you guys are working together equally. So.
Yeah, I'll start, if it's okay, I'll go quick. Procedurally, there is a lot of DAO tooling out there already. I think the challenge is finding it. So if anyone, we've put together an entire matrix of different DAO tooling and which chains they work on and things like that. So if anyone has interest in themselves, please just reach out to us and we'll give you guys that no problem. So that's, I think, the first step from a procedural standpoint is just to look at what chain you want to build on, outside of your own, the business idea that you may have. There's a lot of DAO tooling available. In fact, we think that there needs to be a DAO conference, right? Like there's an NFT Miami, there's Bitcoin Miami. We think there needs to be DAO Miami, and so we're working on that as well, because what we would like to do is to put people in who want to start DAOs or who have started DAOs in contact with these groups who have created some amazing tooling and learn more and try to allow those folks to interact. And also the big side, I don't know if I'm preempting, but if you just want to start a DAO and you don't have a lawyer, you're probably going to get in trouble. Like, I'll just be honest with you. If you're just releasing a token, the SEC is going to smack you down. And so the other reason we want to do that conference and talk at length, to the extent that it's sexy for you guys, is how to do your darndest. Because admittedly, the SEC is not given it's one of the worst in the world, shall we say, from a regulatory standpoint in terms of its overarching weight, and they also have not given a great deal of clarity intentionally for folks like us. They are wait and see approach, and then they use us as examples to smack us down. And so, the big, I think, concern, and why we've spent, frankly, a lot of resources and time is on the compliance and regulatory side, because you can have an extremely successful raise, you can have extremely successful business idea and proposition, and the DAO can be humming along perfectly. And the SEC has essentially said they view all crypto as a security. And so at any given time, they're coming right now for FTX, they're coming for Coinbase, they're coming for stable coins. They will come for your DAO. And so having the protections in place as adequately as you can reasonably do based on the instructions and no action letters that they've provided up to this point is, in our opinion, on our side, very vital. And so again, to that point, we may not have enough time to go into it here, but if folks are looking at that and have questions, please reach out to us. We will share everything that we think we know, because we want to build a viable pathway for DAOs to succeed and be compliant, and we want to make sure that everyone else can replicate it and do the exact same thing with whatever they desire. Because there are a lot of everyone in here is smarter and more creative than I am, and so we want to pave that path if we can, so that you guys can do what you want to do.
So I want to speak now to structure and then legal, the things that Sean just raised, legal strategy and structure. And I'm going to go through and give you some articles of faith, okay? Some basic starting points with respect to what you should think about and consider when building out your legal structure. And then I'm going to turn the mic back over to Sean, because I know that he's gone through it with by the Broncos. They've taken a very specific approach, one that I will introduce right now, but I'll let him get kind of deeper into how it ultimately is going to play. When somebody comes to me and says, I want to set up a DAO, and really the term DAO has become generic almost for any on-chain venture. Okay, whether you're going to engage in complex token economics or no token economics, you're just simply using one of the platforms, Ethereum or what have you, to crowdsource, crowdfund, venture. If you're doing any of that, that's generically been called a DAO. The other thing, to Martel's point earlier, the other thing that is kind of not true anymore is that they're not truly decentralized and they're truly not autonomous. There was a heyday of about 2 years where really, truly, there was this global push, and there was a venture by the Constitution, do this, do that, and they were truly decentralized in that it just was AI that took over, and they became a thing, and it just sort of takes on its own life. But at some point, somebody's got to make a choice. Somebody's got to make a business decision. And so you can create multi-sigs and gatekeepers and all of that. And so when somebody comes to me and says, I want to do a DAO, I immediately just drill in. What are you doing? What do you really ultimately want to do? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to accomplish? And can you truly do it in an AI environment where you don't need any sort of leadership at all? So we sort of go through that, and I usually find out that it's more of a traditional business than you think it is, but they want to be on-chain, and they want to raise money, or they want to get global participation, or to Martel's point earlier, they have a niche, and the niche sort of works within the ethos of Web3, and those are good things, right? I mean, those are reasons why you should be thinking about doing it as a DAO. Okay, so this is me. This is my process back to you in that environment. Okay, do you want to be in the United States, or could we do this as an offshore entity structure strategy? Okay, now I've done offshore entities my entire life. I've represented multinationals for all sorts of reasons that do offshore strategy. And I'm saying Cayman, BVI, Isle of Man, Singapore, Hong Kong. I've done those structures my whole life. So I'm very comfortable swimming in those waters. There's nothing weird about that. If you're doing it right, there can be reason to get those types of entities set up. And if you're truly offshore, that is one way that you could potentially avoid some SEC headache. But you're not truly offshore. You're never truly offshore. You're sitting in Utah. You're ultimately, you have to assume a level of SEC scrutiny, of SEC compliance. Now, I'm one that believes that SEC, ultimately, if we ever got some clarity, if we ever were able to craft the rules, which, by the way, is happening. I don't see anybody here, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but I serve on the Utah Legislative Task Force, and we're spending 2 years trying to get Utah's legislation right. We still have federal government overlay, which will be a headache, but we'll sort of work through that. But there is truly an effort both federally and nationally, to allow this world to fit inside a regulatory scheme that can actually work, that we can actually do what we want to do. But right now, to Sean's point, you have to assume a certain amount of compliance, okay? So I explore offshore possibilities with them. Then I'll say, is this going to hold assets? And a lot of times, super valuable assets. NFTs can be really valuable. There's digital assets that all of a sudden the DAO owns, and if they just spin in this sort of decentralized world, who owns them and can you monetize them? I had one client that was an NFT DAO, and their NFTs were killing it, and they wanted to monetize those by making a cartoon, doing shirts and doing different things. And you have to have some sort of internet traditional structure to be able to do that. Okay, so the next sort of phase I go into is that, do you actually want to onshore those? The U.S. jurisprudential system is just better for protecting assets, specifically intellectual property. So I create, to a large extent, I'll create either a Nevada or a Delaware structure where they can hold those assets inside that structure. And then we will consider bifurcating protocol, on-chain, function and activity to what we call treasury or legal, where they can kind of hold some of those assets and still have a sense of decentralized out in the protocol space world, but then have entities that can serve and service as a protection vehicle, as a contracting vehicle, or what have you. Okay, so that's sort of the other option. Then I'll discuss foundation. There are foundation rules that are not quite 501c3, not quite charity rules, that allow for a more liberal approach to, and some that are out there, Singapore comes to mind, that they're using their foundation laws to allow you to be compliant. And so foundation rules. Now, cooperatives are a really cool vehicle, and I'm going to let Sean talk about that because that's what they've chosen to do, and cooperatives may be the answer. There's another answer too that I really like that Sean also knows about. I don't know if we'll be able to get deep into it, but Native American sovereign nations are developing DAO constructs, legislative constructs, that would allow you to sort of register within their sovereign nation and then function, totally legally function within that sovereign nation. Now, how great is that, right? How much better is that than whatever, casinos or whatever? They can actually do that and function, and then bring that tribe into this really cool Web3 space. So I'll turn the mic over to Sean, ask Sean to go through his cooperative strategy, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, we're working directly, our legal team is working directly with the Miwok Nation in Northern California to do exactly that, right? I'm hopefully not offending anyone from Wyoming, but this Wyoming LLC DAO thing is kind of a bastardization, and it's not going to work, I don't think, long term. But so, yeah, from a cooperative standpoint, here's just kind of a quick background, and I'll try to be comprehensive and respective of time. But you know, when you look at like a token in general, and you don't do anything to increase the value of that token that's sitting in your wallet, but it yet increases nonetheless, it starts to look like a security for the SEC. If you don't have a hand in its success, it looks like you are, invested in a security. It's as simple as that, I guess, unless you disagree. Here's the beautiful thing with cooperatives. When you talk about an LLC, a C Corp, an S Corp, all of them are designed hierarchical in nature, right, where they concentrate wealth at the top, and they're extractive in nature, in that they take the proceeds from their customers, their clients, out of the hands of the customer or client, out of the hands of the entity itself, and usually are put into the coffers of a few select individuals, typically the founders or the C-suite level folks. A cooperative is the exact opposite. A cooperative is already democratic in nature in that every member of a cooperative has the right to vote, just like a DAO. A cooperative also recycles the profits from the cooperative's for-profit enterprise to the members of the cooperative. And the reason they can do that without running afoul of the SEC is that members of a cooperative provide what's called patronage. Here, let me give you a simple example. REI. I don't know if any of you guys shop at REI. I obviously look like a weed dealer, right? Like I shop at REI, I'm a member of REI. And at the end of the year, all that I spend at REI as a member, I get 10% back. And as a consumer of their products, I help the cooperative succeed. Therefore, I can avail myself of the financial benefits when they turn a profit. And so you just take the cooperative business model, and essentially that's a rolling chassis if any of you guys are car people, and the engine is the DAO. You put the engine in that cooperative business model, and in theory, if you operate operationally from a successful ethical standpoint and follow all the rules, the SEC does not touch dividends in Jersey by engaging in the metaverse that we're creating. You are providing patronage as a member of the cooperative, aka the DAO, and you can then avail yourself of any financial benefits that we reap at the end of the year. Does that make sense? Or is anyone, like, hopefully that's helpful, because we think that this is the future of DAOs from a legal standpoint. There are still complications, right, when it comes to tokenomics. One of our major things is, as I mentioned, I'm a member of REI. When you go to REI right now on their website for $30, I think, you can buy a lifetime membership. You get a unique membership ID number, and that stays with you for life. And every time you make a transaction, that thing sits with you and it records all of your transactions. That's how they are able to calculate your patronage. What we're doing is we're taking an NFT, and some of you, hopefully, hair doesn't catch on fire, we're making it soul-bound. That NFT is going to be locked to your wallet. It cannot be traded or transferred. There's no secondary marketplace for it. It is your virtual membership card. And that is what allows us to whitelist everything. That is what allows us to give you voting rights through snapshot, everything that we do within the DAO, within the cooperative. That is your membership, and your wallet is able to verify that this person is, one person, one wallet, one vote, everything like that, as well as whitelisting tokens, digital assets that we provide, etc. That also allows us to, provide you with patronage and opportunities to engage with the DAO and the cooperative, and then avail yourself of the financial benefits that may come, again, we cannot guarantee, but that may come from successful operation of the DAO. Does that, any questions, like genuinely, any questions? Because, yeah, shoot. That's a great question. Yeah. No, that's a great question. So there are other digital assets like a token, and our token is semi-fungible, right? So you guys probably are learning or hearing more about 1155s and some of their capabilities. We're looking at that as potentially the future when it comes to the SEC, because even with a 20, I'll answer your question more directly in a second if that's okay, but even with a 20, you can put the smart contract in place anticipating, hopefully, that if the SEC says you can't do this, you already have that built in the smart contract where you can turn off that functionality of the token, for example. So it's kind of like, again, we have to guess what the SEC wants or does not want, because they don't know yet. All they know is that they want to sit and bide their time to smack down one of us if we become successful as a DAO, right? And I say us meaning like the DAO itself. So to answer your question of why one vote, one token, here's, from a cooperative standpoint, typically that is how a legal cooperative functions, is that one member gets one vote. Plus, on top of that, we did not want to, totally transparently, we didn't want to reward the rich people, right? We looked at quadratic voting. I don't know if you guys have seen quadratic voting or familiar with that. The concept is, let's say Martel's the rich guy, right? He has 6 tokens, and it costs us 10 tokens to buy the Denver Broncos. He has 6. Each one of us has 1, and you have 1. So in a traditional setting where it's 1 vote per token, Martel runs the show. We have no representation. Quadratic voting might say, Martel, his first vote costs him 1 token, his second vote costs him 5. So now Martel has 2 votes, the rest of us have 4, and there's a more democratic position. But Martel still gets 60% of the profits, so he still has a financial, fiscal benefit by being the rich guy in the group. But going back to your question more directly, from a cooperative standpoint, we considered quadratic voting, but it seemed as though it fits better within the cooperative legal structure and can withstand scrutiny to just be 1 wallet, 1 vote. And we feel better about that. And we're not offshore, man. We're in Colorado. So like by the Denver Broncos, it makes sense for us to be registered as a cooperative in Colorado. Colorado has a kick-ass governor. He was the first, he was the chair of the blockchain caucus, founder of the blockchain caucus when he was in the House of Representatives at the federal level. He has come out in semi-support of us, I guess. But also they have a legal structure called the LCA. It's a cooperative model that allows for up to 49% of your raise to come from traditional institutional investors, and you still retain all of the legal protections and potential tax benefits of being a cooperative structure. And so we actually have an investment bank that is handling our 49% raise for Reg D. So I'll stop talking. I don't know. Did that answer your question? Any other weirdo questions? Hopefully. And yeah, if you guys have more too, I know we're going to run out of time. Legit, hit us up.
We're at time, but let's do questions. Yeah, let's do questions.
One wallet, one vote, meaning like if you were to create like 5 wallets and then you have 5 votes, I mean, you're giving us money, but yeah, like for the raise. So yeah, that's a great question. So we have one, speaking of DAO tooling, there is one group that we've spoken to, Governor DAO, I don't know if any of you guys know that, but they actually have facial recognition. That is very anti-Web3, very, very, very anti-Web3. So we're not doing that, but within our smart contract for the 721, the soulbound one, we have the right to revoke your NFT for fraud or other sort of violations of protocol within the DAO. So if you sign up with 5 wallets, again, you're going to be contributing 5 times, which is great. But if we are able to detect that, then we would revoke 4 of those 5, and you would not, be able to continue to do that. So again, that's really important about anticipating in the smart contract what you may or may not want things to do, even if you can't even fathom that it might be an existing issue. You do it. If we do it on Snapchat or Snapchat. No. To your question, the way we're doing it, that 49% that I mentioned, which can come from institutional accredited investors, you have to be on that side. But on the DAO side, no, you do not have to be an accredited investor. And that's the whole reason of setting it up as a legal cooperative for us, is because legal cooperatives do not require you to be an accredited investor to participate as a member. And since you provide benefits to the DAO, you can actually avail yourself of the financial benefits if they exist.
Outside of cooperative, there's a possibility that you would want to strategize around accredited investors, which is also very anti-Web3. But they're doing it, and if you contemplate a DAO base that's really small, right? I mean, it could be massive, or it could be really small. It could be 1,000 people, and you could actually require that if you wanted, just to be fully compliant, especially if you're on shore. Go ahead. Say that again. So I have done one transaction as a trust, not the currency trust, but I have done one transaction that's offshore that is a straight trust, and it worked really nicely. But we can discuss that. But I actually, conceptually, I really like the trust concept. Where it gets difficult is if you're in a jurisdiction that requires KYC of the full beneficiary group. Okay, then it may. And so that's one thing we haven't even talked about. The KYC of the DAO base can be an issue. If you have 4, 5, 6,000 and you have to go through KYC to get something registered, it basically is practically impossible. But I like the trust structure, and I've done one trust structure, and I liked in BVI. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Tell your friends that they missed out on the better one.